Get ready, because today you're going to discover the truth about the controversial quit that shocked the UFC. Khamzat destroys rival who wants rematch and causes massive drama. Joe Rogan drops a bomb about who really deserves the BMF belt and will leave you jaw-dropped. Coach reveals insane plan to destroy Chimaev. And Khabib makes chilling prediction that will surprise you. Stay until the end. Reinier de Ridder finally broke his silence after suffering his first devastating defeat in the UFC. After securing 4 impressive victories in less than a year with the organization, the Dutchman was targeting nothing less than the middleweight belt before stepping into the octagon last weekend. Even with the last-minute opponent change, the objective remained intact in the fighter's mind when the decisive moment arrived at UFC Vancouver on October 18th. In the main event, de Ridder was completely dominated by Brendan Allen in a way nobody expected, and the worst happened when his corner decided to stop the fight before the 5th round even began. The nickname RDR made a deep reflection about the mistakes made through an impactful social media post that had everyone commenting. Because of the bizarre way the UFC Vancouver main event ended, Khamzat Chimaev wasn't the only voice harshly criticizing Reinier de Ridder in recent hours. The fighter's corner stands firm on the position that they did the right thing by pulling their athlete from the bout before he absorbed unnecessary damage in the final round. But that definitely didn't stop RDR from being accused of quitting mid-fight, precisely in a bout that could have guaranteed the first chance to face Chimaev for the middleweight title everyone wants. On October 22nd, de Ridder posted his first explosive statement on social media, addressing the defeat and revealing exactly where he believes he got everything wrong. Many people questioned whether fighting so frequently, especially for a competitor who is too big for the weight class, would have negatively impacted his performance last weekend, and de Ridder made sure to address this point directly. "I was not the best fighter in the cage on Saturday, and it hurts deeply. If we've shared the mats, you know I tend to work more and harder than anyone else," de Ridder stated with brutal honesty. "But in the last 2 training camps, I may have exaggerated a little bit. I was so obsessed with conquering that title and being ready when the opportunity appeared that I miserably failed to listen to my body, and last Saturday, that became evident. I won't stray from the path, but Daddy is taking some time off, kids. I wasn't being myself, but I will be again. If you know me, you know exactly what I'm going for. Be nice out there, and see you soon." The victory that really catapulted Reinier de Ridder to another level was his triumph over the undefeated Bo Nickal last May. During an interview on the Ariel Helwani show, Nickal revealed he had heard some worrying rumors about de Ridder facing certain adversity before even stepping inside the octagon on Saturday night, which makes everything even more intriguing. UFC middleweight champion Khamzat Chimaev went after a division colleague for accepting a fantasy matchup between Chechnya versus Dagestan that's getting everyone talking. Just a few months ago at UFC 319, Khamzat Chimaev finally fought for UFC gold when he faced Dricus du Plessis for the middleweight title everyone was waiting for. As most people already predicted, Boers completely dominated and did the inevitable by becoming the new UFC champion, crowning years of absolute domination. And since he found his place at the top of the mountain, he's been having several challengers screaming to face him in his first belt defense. The middleweight division drastically transformed over the last year, with names like Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker being knocked off their pedestals by fighters like Nassourdine Imavov and Anthony Hernandez, completely changing the landscape. And one of the 185-pound competitors desperate to join the mentioned group of middleweights is Ikram Aliskerov, who already has an explosive history with the current champion that few know about. Back in 2019, with only 5 MMA fights under his belt, Chimaev met Aliskerov in the cage at Brave CF23. At that time, Aliskerov was also undefeated and was focused on securing his spot in the UFC through this victory. Boers moved forward and delivered a viral first-round uppercut knockout that instantly put his name on the worldwide mixed martial arts map. In a recent interview that went viral, Aliskerov stated he would fight Chimaev with just a few days' notice, and is extremely confident in his chances of making the result different from the last time they faced each other. However, that definitely didn't sit well with Chimaev, who destroyed the Dagestani fighter for being open to the Dagestan versus Chechnya matchup that's causing controversy. Why do people give interviews to these idiots? When I say, I'll fight someone from Dagestan, it's an interethnic problem. When they say they'll fight me, it's sport. Stop being hypocritical. Chimaev commented, without mincing words, causing an uproar on social media. Last Saturday, a giant middleweight clash involving Brendan Allen and Rainier de Ridder took place at UFC Vancouver, with everyone watching. Rainier's corner subsequently pulled him from the fight at the end of the 4th round after being dominated throughout the entire combat, miserably failing in his attempt to secure a title shot. And with that, the likely challenger to face Chimaev for the belt next is the already mentioned Imavov, who is riding an impressive 5-fight winning streak that cannot be ignored. During a recent episode of his podcast that exploded on social media, UFC icon Joe Rogan dropped the bomb that there may be a different fighter than Max Holloway who is more deserving of the BMF title, and this generated a lot of discussion. Throughout his incredible trajectory in the UFC, Max Holloway repeatedly proved he's one of the bravest fighters of all time, afraid of no one. And that led him straight to the BMF title fight against Justin Gaethje at UFC 300, where he subsequently delivered one of the greatest knockouts in UFC history that nobody will forget. Despite that, after another athlete's recent performance, sport icon Joe Rogan believes there may now be a fighter more suitable to carry the BMF title, and this statement is dividing opinions. A few weeks ago at UFC 320, Alex Pereira reclaimed his light heavyweight title when he delivered a blockbuster knockout against Magomed Ankalaev in the giant rematch between them that everyone wanted to see. And after another overwhelming victory, Rogan moved forward and declared that maybe Poatan is the true BMF that everyone should recognize. The big money fight is Alex versus John Jones at the White House. Are you kidding me? Catch weight, make it 225 pounds. It doesn't have to be for a title, make it the bad motherfucker upper edition, Rogan recently suggested without filters, causing an uproar. You know, you have the BMF belt for 155 pounders. Who's the real BMF? Do you think one of those guys can beat Alex Pereira? Do you think you can put a 155 pounder in there against Alex Pereira? Does Max Holloway survive against Alex Pereira? No, shut the fuck up, Rogan continued saying provocatively. However, despite Rogan's bombastic statement, UFC legend Chael Sonnen completely disagreed with the icon, explaining that Pereira may be the greatest fighter, but that doesn't automatically make him the BMF by the title's definition. I do have my opinion, and it's not the same, Sonnen said in a recent video on his YouTube channel that went viral quickly. The guy who can beat everybody up is the greatest fighter. The guy who is willing to take the fight against anybody is the baddest, Sonnen continued, making his point of view clear on the matter. Sonnen's argument is backed by the fact that Poatan is currently clamoring for a heavyweight super fight against John Jones and openly declared he's not interested in a fight against current champion Tom Aspinall, which raises questions about his willingness to face any challenge that comes his way. It still isn't clear who will be next to challenge undefeated middleweight champion Khamzat Chimaev, and speculation is running wild. At UFC 319 in August, Chimaev dominated Dricus du Plessis over 5 complete rounds to dethrone the South African champion categorically. The challenger's wrestling skill set was able to completely nullify anything his opponent intended to do when they met in Chicago that historic night. Chimaev has given credit to du Plessis since then, admitting he expected Stillknox to be physically stronger than he demonstrated being that decisive night. The coach of one of the top middleweights on the UFC roster believes his fighter would have more success implementing a strategy that DDP apparently was planning to execute, but failed. Dricus du Plessis' thoughts on his game plan for fighting Khamzat Chimaev may have been a joke when he was asked about the matchup back in February. However, approaching UFC 319, du Plessis' coach stated they would try to beat Chimaev at his own game, wanting to wrestle with him instead of completely avoiding this aspect of the fight. The former champion didn't get much opportunity to do this, if it was part of their plan at all, because of how consistently his opponent secured takedowns and accumulated ground control time impressively. Anthony Hernandez is one of the most interesting challenges for Chimaev because of his relentless gas tank and ability to break opponents over time, wearing them down completely. In a recent interview with James Lynch for Inside Fighting, Hernandez's coach, Jim West, outlined a similar approach for how they plan to defeat the champion when the opportunity comes. The one thing I can tell you is, we're not going to be on our back foot, right? It's just not going to happen, West predicted with absolute confidence. Chimaev doesn't get to dictate what's happening. We understand he's probably going to shoot, but we will too. We're going to meet in the middle, and we're going to see who can out-finagle and scramble better in those positions and has the better conditioning and awareness in those moments. He was just trying to muscle his way out of things using brute force. Well, that's not going to work. Our game plan will be the Anthony Hernandez. We don't change who we are. We're going to go out, and we're going to do what's best, and we're going to shove it down your throat, and you're going to be forced to stop it. We know Chimaev is going to do the same thing. Let's see what happens. West completed defiantly. Anthony Hernandez could have already cemented himself as the next challenger to face Khamzat Chimaev if he hadn't suffered an injury at the wrong time. Hernandez withdrew from the matchup with Rainier de Ridder at UFC Vancouver and was replaced by Brendan Allen at the last minute. Talking to Inside Fighting, West revealed that Fluffy is already back to full-time training, and discussions have already started about his next outing to the octagon. West added he believes Sean Strickland, or Dricus du Plessis, will be the next opponent they'll face on the path to the title. Umar Nurmagomedov is determined to put himself back in contention by rebounding from the first loss of his career this weekend that promises lots of action. His opponent, Mario Bautista, will also be hopeful to earn a title shot if he can extend his winning streak inside the octagon to an impressive 9-0. The American unquestionably put together one of the best winning streaks in the bantamweight division, but many of his biggest victories were overshadowed by criticism and controversies. Bautista's latest win over Patchy Mix at UFC 316, for example, led to a bigger discussion about the former Bellator star's disappointing debut, instead of focusing on his performance. Despite this, Nurmagomedov told TNT Sports during a Fight Week interview that he wasn't surprised this matchup would be next for him. He revealed that Khabib Nurmagomedov instantly predicted Bautista would be his next opponent right after UFC 316 in June, showing the legendary fighter's sharp vision. When he beat Patchy Mix, I was watching with Khabib, or he texted me saying, "He's next for you." I expected that because 8-0 is good. I don't want to say nobody knows him, but he's not too famous. For him, it's a good opportunity to become famous. If he fights with me, a lot of guys are going to watch, and the other thing is, it's a good opportunity for him to become a contender, Umar explained frankly. As part of Khabib Nurmagomedov's team, Umar Nurmagomedov is surrounded by elite fighters and champions regularly in day-to-day training. All of them have hopes of replicating the Eagle's legendary run that saw him become a UFC champion and retire undefeated, something extremely rare in the sport. In the same interview with TNT Sports, Nurmagomedov admitted that while he hopes to follow in his cousin's footsteps, he knows he can still be a great fighter, even suffering some setbacks along the way. I was expecting my career to be the same as Khabib. I wanted to repeat his results, but we have a lot of champions, for example, Georges St-Pierre, who lost a lot of times, and he got revenge on everybody. Everybody recognizes that he's one of the greatest. I think my way is going to be the same with Islam Makhachev. More like Islam, he reflected. Umar Nurmagomedov looks to return to the win column in a giant 135-pound matchup that has everything to be epic. Since suffering the first loss of his career earlier this year, Nurmagomedov is targeting a rematch with Merab Dvalishvili for the bantamweight title that would be historic. The back-and-forth battle at UFC 311 in January produced both positives and negatives for both champion and challenger with how competitive the bout was. After falling short of the goal, Khabib Nurmagomedov was brutally honest when reflecting on his cousin's defeat in the biggest fight of his career up to that point. The former title challenger has now revealed what the Eagle thinks about his return at UFC 321 on Saturday night, bringing sky-high expectations.